When you lean back like that, Ross, she looks like a thumb.
That's it. That's the clip. That's what gets played on Talk Sport next week. When you lean back, Ross, you literally look like a thumb. I have my Ross.
Oh my god, that's Ross too. Just draw an eyes and mouth on that.
Do we need to have a disclaimer about bad language?
Get offended easily, go fuck yourself.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think I've already pressed record anyway, so we kind of started.
Yeah, so it's our shit talking.
Yeah. Okay, what do you think of the title, actually? I've called it Bullish, Bitcoin, Bullshit, and Banter.
Yeah.
The 4Bs for short, because there's 4 of us, and there's Bs.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but like...
Yeah, you didn't like my suggestion then.
And what was your suggestion?
What did you say?
4 men in a Bitcoin.
Oh, right. Okay.
Just ignore me.
Just sounds right. Isn't it like 4 men and a baby?
Yeah.
But we've got...
Men?
Yeah.
It was 3 little men, wasn't it?
Yeah, three men and a little lady or baby. I can't remember which one it was.
Oh, a little lady.
Well, it was both, I think.
That
was the sequel.
You could be Tom Selleck if you want.
I haven't got a good enough moustache for that. I can't pull it off.
He's got a moustache. Well,
yes.
I think everyone here, apart from me, could shave it off to have a good moustache.
Yeah, I think the title was good. I mean, we can always mix it up for different episodes as well. But the main theme of being bullish on Bitcoin, I think that's the way to go, right?
Yeah, I think we're going to be loaded up on that. There's plenty of bullshit. It's just the banter I've got questions about.
No, it's shocking.
It will always be shit banter.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the first topic was going to be microphone gate. And I love this one because I think it just perfectly like articulates almost like our behaviors of how we kind of interact with new information and making like an investment. So it just weirdly like, mirrors almost how we almost got into Bitcoin. Well, I just happened to have stumbled across it first. I've done my research and suddenly there's a requirement for it. So I shared info into the group. And then I loved how all 3 of you reacted with that because I could almost have predicted it perfectly. Whereas like
the order in which people would do it as well.
And even the way you did it. So you've got Darnell was first. You read some information, largely stays out of the discussion. You quietly read something, makes a decision. First thing you hear is done. He's brought it. Boom, he's in. You got Mark. You get more involved in the conversation, but then you kind of I think come to the same conclusion as Darnell, but you leave it to the last minute, like to the end. And even now, that's the thing. You're plugging it in 10 minutes before we go live. We've got all the problems now. It's just last minute Larry over here.
Not even 10 minutes before we go live. It's 3.
Yeah, you're actually plugging it in live. Then you got Ross.
Yeah.
Ross will like ask a million questions. He'll go off and try and find research that counteracts the stuff that I've provided you. And in the end, we're all just in, and you'll get FOMO and buy it in the end anyway. It's like... But literally microphones and Bitcoin, they could be the same thing.
I disagree. So I'm quite naturally tight. So you're saying my microphone's fine. So I'm like, why do I need one?
Yeah.
I was thinking exactly the same for you as well, Ross. Like I'd previously researched the microphone stuff and I thought, yeah, it's good. I can use it in other things. And I've come to find that I just use it daily now throughout the work stuff. And I think you benefit from it too.
I think if you've got somebody who's doing something, they're doing something good, and they tell you to do it that way, then that's always a way that you should look at. And I've seen Gaz do it, and then I spoke to Darnell, and after about 30 seconds on the Teams call, I was just like, "Yeah, buy the microphone. Why wouldn't you buy that one?" How's the order going, Ross? Is it done?
It's not done. I said that I'd do it. If we're going somewhere with these chats, but now I'm also thinking, well, I could just get by with my laptop.
I think when you look back, and again, I've probably spent way too much time on YouTube and too many interviews. If it was okay just using a laptop, than everyone would. But some of the best interviews, the audio quality, it's all about that. And hopefully, we're going to try and replicate that too.
Yeah, so it could be, we have our bit of a social doing these quite often. I don't know how often we'd have to do it because we'd actually have to think of things to talk about. I mean, it could be an investment for it, if we enjoy it, decide we want to do it really regularly. And when we can actually go for food, we go for food as well. But obviously we lose out on that week.
We bring the microphone with us.
Yeah.
We get
to the steakhouse. Oh yeah, that room.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Get the curtain drawn.
Laptop, microphone, bang.
Not serving anyone drinks upstairs. The bar's closed today.
Yeah, that's the one. We can always edit the stuff out as well.
Yeah.
If it's really, really loud. I mean, outside might be a push. Maybe I'll let you test drive that one, Gaz. An outdoor microphone.
That'd be fine. It'd be easy. But yeah, so I think that just leads on to the next bit, really, which is like why we're even here. Like, what's your individual motivations for like doing a podcast like this?
Anybody want to fill that first? Because if they don't, I will. You have that awkward moment when you're looking at the screen and like, who's going to answer it? I don't know. I think when you've got 4 people all trying to achieve the same thing, but everybody has a different way and opinion in getting there, then, and it makes it better when you've known each other a long time. I think there's always the scope and the ability to learn, but I think there's also, whilst we've got lots of differences, there's a lot of similarities which will ultimately end up leading us down that same path. So I think there's enough synergy, but there's also, the difference of opinion and the different ways to get to the end game.
Yeah, definitely. I guess it may be worthwhile taking everybody back a little bit further and thinking about how we all came together and the Justice League. And the purpose of it was to kind of just do something different as opposed to just going to work. And I won't even say 9 till 5 because we were working harder than 9 till 5 as well. So that's out of the window, isn't it? But ultimately, how can we make our money work better for ourselves? And one of those is, as we know, a passive income or perhaps investment and being proactive in that investment. And so we naturally started off with stocks and the stocks of our company that we were working for and working for. And then, okay, that's a good stock. It's doing all right. We can influence that. What else is out there? What looks like ours? And then, lo and behold, we went down the rabbit hole and Bitcoin it kind of consumed our lives too much, maybe.
It can never be too much.
Yeah, it can never be too much.
I just get every time I'm looking at my phone. You're not talking to Gaz about Bitcoin again, are you?
How about you, Gaz?
I think just going into what Darnell touched upon then, I think one of the biggest things for me in Justice League was learning more about money. So,
yeah,
you get to how many years ago? About 4 or 5 years ago. And it was like, oh yeah, I've got bits of shares here, bits of shares there, I've got cash. And it's understanding, for me, it's been a bit of a journey learning when to invest, learning what actually value is. And I was just flicking through my phone to find a quote, which I found just before, which was stolen from Jeff Bezos, which is his investments are based on if it's going to change people's lives. I think that's a really interesting one. And it's actually someone else who's quoting Jeff Bezos for why he invests, which is Shaq. So he was looking at how he can better his money. I thought that was a really interesting way to look at it. And Bitcoin does fit into that, because how does it better your life? And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. People point it to being a tulip, Ponzi scheme, a bubble. I'm trying to think what else I've heard or read lately, which has just been unfounded nonsense.
Yeah, it's boiling the oceans, and it's only for criminals. Which it's just super ironic, because actually it's the complete opposite. Like literally, if you fix money, you fix the world. Like human beings are driven by incentives, and most of our incentives tend to be like money or sex or power, like something like that. And when money is just infinitely, like whoever has access to the money printer has access to all the money in the world, then their incentives are completely biased to make sure they stay as close to that control as possible, and they'll do anything to fight to keep it. So like that's where all the criminal activity happens, right in the middle of our central banks. And then it just cascades down. And as the further away you are from the central bank, the more fucked you are from the people in the middle. And Bitcoin literally just decentralizes it and goes, no one's in the middle now. Everyone has equal access. No one can just print more. No one has more power than anyone else. It's quite funny almost that the main criticism is you could not be more wrong. You're so wrong.
Very passionate about that. I love it.
One which also as well what you said, Ross, and it's about, because I feel like I've been a student of money for a long time, and there's been a bunch of books, Rich Dad Poor Dad, Rob Moore, he wrote a book just simply entitled Money, and then going down that path as well of, okay, what drives people? And then to your point, Gaz, I do feel like Bitcoin is like the ultimate leveler as well. You know, the everyday person can start to get involved in that wealth exchange. Then you start looking at central banks and how central banks control money, how they manipulate the prices, how they then kind of turn that economic machine, and you can get out of that. And again, I think maybe one of the reasons, or certainly it was one for me, is, yeah, you know, I love working, but how can I actually then create more choices for myself? And Bitcoin is a choice for you to try and get out and be a little bit different to obviously the typical fiat cash and fiat money.
I think you kind of got different stages. You've got the get out, you know, you've got enough money to retire, but you've also got, I've got enough money to retire when I want. I'd love to have that choice, you know, actually be sitting there going, I enjoy my job. I really like what I'm doing, but at any point, if I decide this isn't what I want anymore, I can just leave and I can find the right opportunity for me, or I can start doing things which will reward me in different ways.
Well, I think it's the confidence as well that fiat job you have. Like, there's nothing wrong with having a fiat job. Like, most people are still going to have it, even in the Bitcoin world. We're going to have jobs that just pay in Bitcoin and not fiat. But the benefit of working in a Bitcoin world as opposed to a fiat world is the money that you earn and the wages you earn. If you keep that and just save it, just save the sats that you earn, they will still be valuable for your grandkids' grandkids. At the moment, the fiat money you earn, you have to invest it. You have to. And most people don't. They have no clue what they're doing. So they keep the savings in the bank account and they see them just erode away to nothing. And so once they see that, they just go, well, there's no point saving. And they just go into this spending, like high time preference kind of world, because, well, why shouldn't I buy the handbag or that fast car? Because if I've got 20 grand now, I might as well freaking get the use of it, because my grandkids, 20 grand in 50 years time is going to be the equivalent of like 200 pounds. So I might as well get the value now.
Using an example of that, one which I see most often is cars. Like, I remember cars when I was like 20 something, I was looking, going, oh yeah, I really want that car, because it's, you know, nice and all that. And, you know, something as simple as like a Ford Focus was 20 grand new. Now they're about, they're what, 26, 27 or even more brand new.
Probably more than that now.
Yeah, exactly. It's just shot up and no one's actually noticed this. And like Gaz says, it's like time preference. You kind of go, well, if I don't spend it now, that car's going to be worth well up my reach in 10 years' time. And the same applies to the handbags. It applies to houses as well. Even though houses are a bit more of a solid investment, you do get a bit of a return. So it has the value when you sell it. And it is, you know, kind of going back to one of your earlier points about crime. I was reading, I think it's Layered Money, which Darnell knows, with the Renaissance and how the money was actually solid at that time. So it enabled them to actually spend time working, but also time inventing, time pushing the world forward. I can't remember what the coin was. Was it the dinar?
The Florence?
Florence,
that's it. Yeah, the Florence, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting thing because you hear all these kind of like headlines around why Bitcoin's great and all good, but when you get the examples, you kind of go, oh, it actually clicks in place. You look at the earlier times in the Roman Empire when it actually had a solid coin before they started clipping it away. And the same applies to the Renaissance. When it was a solid coin, people could actually save, could actually live, didn't have to worry about the inflation being taxed unnecessarily. And it is a bit mind-blowing when you actually go down the hole. Like, that was me a year ago.
Yeah,
No, I think that was me like 6 months ago. I've just renewed the lease on my car, and if I'd have thought back, if I 6 months ago now, then I wouldn't do it. You know, there was nothing wrong with the car that I had before. You know, to start with. So it is that people get sucked in, and then it's a cycle, and it's almost expected. You know, oh, you change your car every 2 years, you do this, you do that. You have to go on that 20 grand holiday. You know, people in the world and the media set this expectation of what a lifestyle is, and people want to be those people. They want to achieve that, and it is that, yeah, give it me now.
See, that's the funniest thing about your timeline, because you're the one who I noticed the most, Mark, because you're the last one to really go into Bitcoin between us. So I remember asking you got a new car, what's an Audi Q5 or whatever, so
Yeah.
a really nice car. And I said to you, when you first started going to Bitcoin, I was like, so do you regret buying it? You're like, no, I need a car for work. Then literally within about 4 weeks, you were saying, I wish I hadn't bought that car. Yeah. And it's just funny watching people's like time preference change in such a short amount of time.
It's when you see what you could be doing with anything that was extra, and it doesn't necessarily even, you know, just go for Bitcoin. It's just in general. It's like you're prioritizing your time, you're prioritizing your money, and you're prioritizing your investments. But yeah, you look at that money and you think, do I need that Starbucks every day? That's £3.50. You know.
So what's your opinion on that Starbucks now?
Well, what's interesting?
How you feeling about Buc-ee's right now?
Yeah.
I need to understand this, because
I bought some coffee beans and the Starbucks syrup. So I have Starbucks in my kitchen, and I still go to the drive-through. So.
Oh, you still go? What about? I know
that
things
caffeine addiction.
I know things are only just opening now, but what about restaurants? Because I know that you like your fine dining. What's your opinion on that now?
No, food. You can spend money on food. That doesn't count. You need to eat to live. That's not.
As long as it stays.
Yeah.
Not a plant-based restaurant.
No.
Going back to what you were saying, Ross, about the tax as well, and being taxed on things. And I think that's maybe a message that more people that are getting into Bitcoin should really understand as well, and the inflation that you were talking about as well, the inflation of items and how they don't necessarily hold their value in the same way that Bitcoin will hold their value, and then the way it makes you also think differently as well. You think differently to, well, do I actually want this, or do I actually need this? And can I kind of preserve myself to wait for things a little bit longer? And the money that I'm using, is it worthwhile or is it not worthwhile? And I think when people actually are not just trying to jump on the Bitcoin bandwagon of, oh yeah, if I put £1,000 in now, it'll go to 2,000 and so on, or they just get FOMO and they shock out and they're like, okay, right, I'm out. And they actually think about what they're doing and where they're putting their money. I think that's the message hopefully people will get.
Because I've had like relatives and friends say, oh yeah, I'll put like, $1 grand in, and then I'll take my original money out, and then I'll have the profit to leave in. I was just like,
the classic,
yeah, I was just like, it's something different. I think that's what people struggle to get their mind around, but it isn't just a little investment in, say, like the .com bubble or something. This is evolution of money, and I think people really struggle to get their head around that. But I think there are some aspects of Bitcoin which I think really need to be simplified, which one of them being around storage, because your everyday man, I think it's a bit beyond them.
It's not just that, it's daunting, isn't it? That first time that you do it, those 5 minutes that you wait because it's new, because it's something you've never done before, and because you've just sent your whole portfolio without checking the address,
Oh my gosh, the longest 5 minutes ever, if not.
That's nearly how like everyone gets wrecked that first time. They fucking don't check the address, they send the whole balance once, and then boom, you're wiped out, and then you're like, that's a learning curve.
Yeah.
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 You think like you've got to have your ledgers, you've got to have your hardware for your you want to you want to store your ledgers somewhere.
Of course.
You want to store your secret words somewhere,
Of
and you want to
course.
have a backup of your secret words on metal. So if there's a house fire, whatever, you still got that. So you got to think about doing all that, all those different stages, and you got to think about where on earth am I going to put this, where someone will struggle to find them.
Yeah.
I would
Or
say
But you
80
have
to
to think.
90% of people were never even
Yeah.
at that stage. They're still on, they're running hot right now on the actual exchange.
Yeah, you're spot on though, because that's what's going to happen, and that's what's happening now. Like people will just buy and that they'll skip that bit, but
Yeah.
not necessarily realizing how dangerous or risky or how how that could affect them. But the principle of doing the cold storage, essentially, you become your own bank. It's empowering, and when you realize that's what you've done, and nobody can take that, nobody can touch that, nobody can come for that in ways that they can at the moment. You realize how empowering it is, but also realize how scary it is. Every time I go to walk the dogs, I'm like,
and
Do you
also
think enough people are go for it, man?
I was just going to say you need to be careful about those boat accidents.
Yeah, the thing is, for me, I think people buy Bitcoin and get into Bitcoin and secure their own Bitcoin when they deserve to. So, like you say, it's complicated now. When I was first buying Bitcoin, I had to send money to Estonia. It disappeared for a week. It popped up in Coinbase. Then I buy some. I was getting version 1 of the freaking ledger. I was having to write down on bits of paper. There's no metal seed recovery. There was just barely any podcasts. There was no books written about it. It was I was reading Reddit posts and trying to figure this stuff out. It was tough. And but I got through that. And then guess what? I reaped the benefit. Then you guys come in when it's a little bit more mature. And now already you're super early still. You're going to reap the rewards. Now, the people that finally get in another couple of years when the next stage of the user experience isn't a lot better, they will get in eventually, but their rewards will be less. Eventually, it's going to be a piece of piss, and there's going to be companies on every street corner kind of educating people and just making it super simple. But guess what? By that point, fiat and Bitcoin, fiat will be just this little thing that you spend occasionally. Bitcoin will be the standard, and it will become gold, and then you get 2 to 5% price increases a year just to tick over. So there will be no gains. It's just purely a store of value now. So I always think whenever I hear, because I've heard all three of you when you've been coming in, Bitcoin's never going to be big until this thing's fixed. I'm like, I like it being really broken, because that means we're early. That means the average person can't get in, and it means there's a shit ton of money that is about to come in once that thing's fixed. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
When I see Coinbase rejecting people through their process, and every single one of you, I think, bounced off their process at some point, took months to get back in. I'm like, beautiful. That means so many people have tried to sign up and then failed. Once that gets fixed, there's going to be a freaking avalanche of money coming in. It's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, you could I tried to sign up for 4 exchanges and got failed with 2 of them. So you've got to do 4 accounts to get to. So that's still early days.
But
I mean, some of the exchanges are closing the doors, literally not letting in customers. So not even those customers that have tried and then got denied. They've just literally said, "Club's packed. We got too many in here. We'll get back to you in a bit."
Okay. And what a crazy situation that is. I think every bull market, it tends to happen where the exchanges just get full. And they literally they're making so much money. We've seen Coinbase now. They've just IPO'd, all their figures are public. They're making billions a month. It's completely insane. And their biggest problem is just pissing off so many customers they might get sued. So they close the doors because they don't want to get sued, and they couldn't be making more money off the customers they already have. So there's so much pent up demand, which I think is why when things like Dogecoin freaking pop up on Cash App and whatever, all the kids just freaking jump on it, because they've the process to buy Bitcoin is a little bit difficult, and it requires a bit of thinking, and you need to know why you're buying it. Do you really believe in the evolution of money and all that kind of stuff, or do you believe in a meme? It's funny. Yeah, it's funny. It's a dog. Fine. Easy thinking. And because you don't get it, buying it $10 worth of that on your phone, you're fine with that. You can't take custody of it. No one's freaking going to accept it. It's hyperinflating. It's a crazy, like, hyperinflating cryptocurrency. It's literally, inflation is built in. 1 billion more Dodge get printed every 10 minutes or something crazy. And no one seems to care because its number go up. Elon tweets about it occasionally. And and it's beautiful because those people are going to get wrecked. But at least I think it's a baby step towards Bitcoin. So I'm kind of supportive of it because it's better than fiat, but they're so far away still.
But when they get wrecked and when they get burnt, there's a danger that reflects on Bitcoin, though it's totally different.
That's true. Yeah. Everyone wraps everything all up in one.
Yeah.
You know, they
Death
say
by association.
They say, yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
And you talked about, you know, the whole storage. I feel as though people that aren't really worried about their storage of Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency, because of course you can take that off the exchange as well and put it onto a ledger, probably doesn't have enough skin in the game to really warrant like thinking about that next step. And they may have already done like a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand, but when you start really getting into bigger numbers and maybe you've seen a couple of multiples happen, that's when you start to think, oh, hold on, I wouldn't leave 20 grand lying around in the house. I better wrap this up, you know. So I think that's when people start to really cotton on. And then going back to your point of, yeah, maybe I need to make sure I'm not just leaving these words on a piece of paper for the ink to fade or for a fire to happen and then I lose it, etc., etc.
Well, it's interesting. I think anyone in the Western world, we trust organizations, and because we've never seen it. Like you can leave 20 grand in the bank, and other than inflation, which people don't understand, the 20 grand is going to be there. Like even if that bank fails, it's insured, and a different bank or the government will just give you your money back. But if we lived in Venezuela or Brazil or Argentina, we would not have this mindset. You leave your 20 grand in a bank account, you might walk up to that bank one day and withdrawals are just closed.
Add Cyprus to that list. You should add Turkey to that list. You know, they're all going on there right now.
Yeah, we had Argentina had their wealth tax, didn't they? That was apparently a once in a lifetime wealth tax, and I think it was when it was above 1 million, whatever the Argentinian currency is, and that. Right. And do you know what that million was? It was 10 grand.
Mm-hmm.
So it's literally the majority of the country had this wealth, you know, and they just stole it off them.
Yeah, I don't know what the equivalent was in Cyprus, but yeah, it was essentially a haircut, wasn't it? They called it, of anything over a certain limit, and then you just got cropped.
And it's happened countless times, and it's happening right now in Venezuela. They've hyperinflated their currency, so even if you get access to the bank account, yeah, great, your 10 grand might still be there. They might do this wealth tax thing, but a much more efficient way of stealing all of that money without telling you is just to hyperinflate the currency. So that 10 grand now is spending power of £1. So even if you actually get access to it, just like in Zimbabwe, you can have a whole shopping trolley full of notes, but you can't buy a loaf of bread with it. So it's completely garbage. So all they can do is just flee, and they just have to try and leave that country, but they can't take any wealth with them, because that's the problem with houses, the problem with businesses, the problem with gold. Like it's very hard to get valuable items across a border and leave like a government that has just gone tyrannical and has stolen all the wealth of its people, which is why Bitcoins are so powerful, because there's Venezuelans leaving every single day from Venezuela, and they're popping up in various countries all around the world, and they've got their 24 words. They can fire that off into a Bitcoin wallet, and they've taken their wealth with them, and there's not a single government on the land that can stop them from doing it. And it's just, and I think it sounds like an edge case, but it's like, that is crazy. That is like being part of that type of movement where you're literally saving people's lives, where they're being able to take a lifetime of wealth, like their family after generation after generation, their government's gone tyrannical, they want to leave and restart. They can do that with Bitcoin. Before Bitcoin, they literally had to leave with nothing, and they turned up as refugees and had to start from zero again in a new country. They don't have to start from zero anymore.
Yeah.
Well, that goes back to, again, the whole layered money and how there was once upon a time a universal money yeah, maybe it, before it was like the Florian, and where people would just use that across the world. And Bitcoin allows for that. If you're in Zimbabwe, you got to change that Zimbabwe dollars into wherever you go, and so on. So by having that universal, yeah, well, Bitcoin works here, there, and everywhere, it gives everybody that power and a level playing field.
Yeah. That's what so many people are yet to understand about it, is that
Yeah.
it's the only way you can actually take control of your wealth right now today. Otherwise you're putting it in the hands of other people, literally other people in control of your wealth. Like your bank decide tomorrow, shutting the door.
If you think a simple example this year, just in the UK, what have we had inflation of? Because they never release their full figures. But if we're following the US dollar, it's over 20%, isn't it, within the last year? So literally, a loaf of bread, it costs you £1, it's now £1.20.
Yeah.
Or potentially a little bit less, because it doesn't always trickle down all the way. But you've had a massive amount of inflation. Real wages aren't going up. So basically, you've had a stealth tax put in.
100%.
And that's a prime example of what's going on.
Yeah, my shopping bill's gone up huge. And also I've noticed that, not a little bit sneaky, is like the use by dates and the expiry dates have shortened
Really
as
short,
well.
aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah. So it gets you back to the shops again. So not only has the actual price increased, it's also, they know that, well, you're not going out and you're not allowed out. So, effectively the shop was the new going out. I'll see you on aisle 4, party on aisle 4. Like, it was that was the thing, because no one was able to go anywhere. Food, and I'm sure alcohol, has probably increased in the last year because people haven't been able to go out and do anything other than that.
Going into a counter argument about that, I always see the one about, TVs have gone down in price. You can now get a 60-inch TV for about 800 quid, whereas 800 quid 15 years ago would have got you about a 24-inch terrible picture. Fairly flat screen, but not as flat now. But that's just, I think that's a good one to talk about, is advances in technology and why that has been brought down. It's cheaper to produce, massively cheaper, because chipsets, LEDs, everything has been mass produced much easier. Whereas you look at real examples, it'd be houses, cars, your shopping, even a loaf of bread. Because I remember a loaf of bread at university, it was 40 pence or something like that. I don't think you can get a loaf of bread for anywhere near that price. I think it's at least double.
Yeah.
Well, it was something like 80p to fill a litre when I started doing. Like, we're not going to ever see 80p a litre again. So, it's 150, 160 at the moment in some places.
Yeah, I remember I did that post on LinkedIn about inflation, trying to educate people, and that guy came on and started freaking talking about TVs, and I wanted to slap his head off, because it's one of them where you go, it's about, you got to compare like for like, and like you said, so with houses and bread, and that's where they're meant to calculate what inflation is. It's supposed to be the product was last year, it's the same value this year. Has anything materially changed? If it has, then, well, yeah, if it's a new industry coming out like TVs, and then a TV costs £200 to manufacture last year, but now they've got the economies of scale, now it only costs them £20, of course the price comes down. That's not inflation, that's just an industry or a sector becoming more efficient at what they do. When you've got something like bread, beans, cars, sofas, all this stuff, they've been around for hundreds of years. We know what the price, we know what those things should cost. Big innovation is not going to happen in those sectors anymore. So they're the things you're supposed to track. But the hilarious thing is, and this is the bizarre thing, I think it's the one thing that Bitcoiners and economists actually agree on, is the CPI algorithm that comes up with what inflation is complete bollocks. Like, even economists agree that it's bollocks, because they literally have a basket of goods that's supposed to represent the average basket of goods that a person buys each year, and then they're supposed to track year by year the value of those things going up and down, and therefore that's the way you get inflation from. They actually they announce it every year when something's too volatile in the basket, they say it messes with the algorithm too much, so they take it out of the basket. Like the whole point, the fact that something's fucking volatile, is it volatile upwards?
Yeah.
Because if it's volatile upwards, that means it's inflation, you idiots. And
Yeah,
you're supposed to be telling people.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, isn't it? That we've always seen is we've all gone off and done our own research, and we found our own narrative, and obviously come together to discuss that narrative. Whereas the general public don't want to read and aren't necessarily reading the right things, and equally aren't being told the right things.
Yeah, the bizarre thing that I get is that so often, like the incentive to believe in that and to argue against it, I honestly don't know what they get out of it, other than just confirming they live in a safe space. You know, like the fact that, I don't know, I almost literally do feel like Morpheus walking into the Matrix, and you've got to go and find Neo. Neo's the only one that wants to be red pilled or orange pilled. Like everyone else, they want to grab the blue pill, and ignorance is bliss. I know it's all bullshit. I know it's all fake. I know the world's corrupt, but I can't handle it. I can't handle the truth. Give me the blue pill. Leave me in the Matrix. Leave me happy. And I know the world's fucked, but I don't want to know. It's too hard to comprehend all that.
Yeah. Talking about this, do we want to talk about how you got into Bitcoin? Because we talked about it in certain areas, and I suppose we go with you guys first, because you were the first person by some way to actually even know what a Bitcoin was. I mean, well, a significant time you were ahead of us in terms of investment.
Yeah, sure. Well, I found it because I obviously my day job was looking into the future, looking at tech, and I think I always had a natural interest in it anyway. So I was following the whole internet boom and also Silicon Valley. So weirdly, the way I actually found Bitcoin, I think I had heard about it on Reddit a couple of times, but completely dismissed it as just a meme, the 4chaners going crazy. And so, but at actually time I actually got interested in it properly it was the Winklevoss twins, because they were suing Mark Zuckerberg for half of Facebook. And I remember him trying to raise a round of funding for Facebook when it was getting massive. And the investors were holding off wanting to invest because they knew Facebook was the next big thing. But they had a lawsuit over their head for 50% of Facebook was going to be taken away by the Winklevoss twins. So eventually they settle and give the Winklevoss twins $100 million just to piss off, go away, leave Facebook 100% owned by Mark Zuckerberg, and he carried off. Then I watched what these guys did with the money. They pumped it all into Bitcoin. And back then, I was a hater. I didn't get it. So when they did that, I didn't like them. I thought they were scammers anyway, for the fact that the way they'd, I've been following the Mark Zuckerberg narrative, where they're just scammers and they've dingled him out of half his business. So I thought that's what they were. So they pumped a lot of money into Bitcoin. I think this was 2012, 2011. And the price of Bitcoin went crazy. It went from $100 where they bought in to $1,200. And I remember all the articles coming out. The Winklevoss twins now have more money than Mark Zuckerberg. They've betted on this new cryptocurrency, and they rule the world now. And then shortly after that, Mt. Gox happened, and everyone lost their Bitcoin. The price of Bitcoin went from 1,200 down to 120 or something. And the Winklevoss twins lost 90% of their wealth. And I remember thinking, I'm glad that freaking Bitcoin thing died. Fuck those guys. That's what I remember. And but the good thing was, I at least had it in my head now. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that I don't know really what it was. I think I actually stumbled across some Andreas Antonopoulos videos on YouTube, and they randomly got recommended to me. And I watched one of his seminars, and holy shit, it all just clicked. I've been a hater of government pretty much my entire life, and the way he articulated it of what the key to their corruption is, and it's their money. And I was like, holy shit! And he literally, the penny dropped. I just could not get enough. And for the next couple of months, I was just all in, trying to figure out what this thing was. And within 2 months, I had liquidated just about every investment I had and had poured it into Bitcoin. I was just all in. And you guys kind of saw that happening, yeah.
But even the fact that you were on Reddit, Reddit is still, I feel, very niche. It's not, it's still not mainstream.
Yeah, it's not mainstream, is it? It's not a group chat on Facebook, is it?
I would argue it is now.
It's probably still, I think it's got about 50 million users, which that's still pretty tiny.
Yeah, and don't forget those 50 million users are then split into their suborgs as well. So, you know, so ultimately it's not 50 million Bitcoiners all in there. They're talking about some random next shit.
Unfortunately, a lot of Reddit now, unfortunately, is politics. So they're actually completely wasting their time. Completely.
Yeah.
Like any discussion of politics is a complete waste of time. Once you realize the whole thing's rigged, it doesn't matter. Literally, they're deranged by arguing left and right. I swear, like 90% of Reddit is arguing who's right, like left or right, red or blue. Like it literally doesn't matter. But that's what they spend the majority of their time arguing, which is always bizarre. I think it's that they're literally arguing a point of just the only incentive of to win an argument is to win some magic internet points, to get a bit of an ego boost, to win an argument. But like as we know, like no one wins an argument on the internet. It's just like, you know, no one wins. Like everyone loses, and that's what 90% of Reddit is. So you really have to dig into the subreddits to find some decent ones. And then even when you find the Bitcoin ones, there's shit tons of scammers in there, shit tons of bad info. Like it's still like the Wild West in there. Like you really got to be careful.
I came across Reddit in a different way actually, and it was around. I was looking at Street Fighter 5, and when it came out in 2016, and from there I was just like, oh, okay. And then I like came across this whole subworld, and then, but yeah, the fact that you found Bitcoin through it, it's amazing. I mean, do you still use it now?
I use it for football for goals. Literally, when I want to see a goal, no matter where it is, someone says, "Oh, it's a good goal, good defending." I'll look it up. I use it for that. I use it for fitness subreddits, and that's it. Because as Gaz says, it's literally just politics, and it's basically usually some 20-year-old versus some 45-year-old with polar views, just arguing about something which they don't really understand, making themselves both look like idiots.
It's great for hobbies. So like the two hobbies that I've got behind me here, got fish and got a drone. I'm on those subreddits, and you'll have people dedicating their entire lives to those two hobbies, and they spend their time on Reddit answering idiot questions for people like me, and they'll really go into detail. You're getting a lifetime of experience there from someone on Reddit who just lives drones or lives like fish. So it's brilliant for that. But those communities are literally like 2,000 or 3,000 big. They're tiny.
Yeah. That's exactly why I was on the whole Street Fighter thing. That sub community was and is still amazing for stuff like that.
Cycling too, so it's ideal for hobbies.
Oh yeah.
But I think, you know, I've tried to follow a couple of the stock subreddits, and it was about GameStop and everything else. Whereas my kind of view is similar to what Jeff Bezos says, is something which I actually believe in. You know, that is my kind of investment philosophy now. And so I just can't bring myself to invest in any of those companies.
I think that's something we definitely all have in common. Once we all understood it, some quicker than others, but once we all understood it, all of us kind of went all in. You know, that is something I can get on board with. That's a philosophy.
It's also interesting.
Yeah, and a future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I've got a good understanding and a grasp of it, but at the same time, there's still so much to learn. Like, I'm really looking forward to hearing the arguments from Frank Gustra and Michael Saylor tomorrow between gold and Bitcoin. Because don't get me wrong, like, I want to understand why Frank is so bullish on gold and bearish on Bitcoin, but equally, I want to hear the same from Michael as well. And the guy who I'm sure many of them may watch, Max Kaiser, he was once a real big gold and silver person as well. And he was as maximalist on gold as he is now on Bitcoin. But then obviously something changed with him. And so he had really strong arguments and principles about gold and about silver. And I'm sure he's probably maybe got a little bit, but maybe just liquidated it all and puts everything on Bitcoin. And I want to understand, okay, why, and continue to learn what else does Michael know about Bitcoin, because
that's the funny thing about Bitcoin.
Behind it.
Everyone starts as a detractor.
Oh,
Everyone starts as a detractor on Bitcoin. Oh, this is why I'm not going to do it. Or
Yeah.
this I'm going to do it next week. Oh, it's too risky. Oh, it's too volatile. Oh, it's too hard. Everybody starts off. Every single Bitcoiner starts off as a detractor, and then they see the light. Yeah, and that's the difference. That's that. Like, I don't know. It's fun watching people do that. You guys probably have fun watching me do that.
Yeah, because you're the last.
You just
Because
smash
you-
your beer.
I talk with my hands, and I wasn't watching what I was doing, and I knocked the bottle over.
I hope it's empty. Yeah, it
Oh,
was
yeah.
funny. It was funny watching you because you were the last one of us. You know, like Gaz, I didn't get the opportunity to watch him because I had no idea what was going on. He talked.
Well, we did watch him. We did watch him get in because he spent ages telling us about it. We might not have watched him detract it, but we definitely watched him get in.
Yeah, but we didn't understand it, so we just thought
No.
he was being a nut job. You know, literally, that was it when he's saying to me in, was it 2016 or 17 when it's about £600? He's like, go in, and I was just like, it's boomed too much. It's a bubble, and like,
I don't understand how you didn't get in after it was so comprehensively explained to you by one of our friends. You know.
I think that's possibly why I didn't get in, because like Gaz said, get in, and I put money into shares, and I think I just about broke even on it because I didn't really understand shares as well. You know, I literally wanted money to magically generate, and then was it 4 or 5 years later, the pandemic happens, we close down, money starts getting printed everywhere, and I was just like, this isn't right. Something's really not right, and that's when things started being put together in my head because I'd read all these various posts which Gaz had put up. He'd spoken to me about it. I'd read little bits, little there, and I was going, And so I was getting out on another investment, and I remember talking to Darnell about it, and I was saying, you know, I was getting rid of this investment. He says, well, what are you going to put the money in? I said, I think I'm going to put into a bit of a fund, but I'm going to put a decent chunk into Bitcoin. And he's like, Bitcoin, you? And I was just like, yeah, I think I'm starting to get it. And but my kind of lag was I was studying for a new job, so I was learning everything about that. And so I put off reading a book, The Bitcoin Standard, and I read that, and I was about 20, 30 pages in. I went, oh. And I just started buying sat after sat. And, you know, I remember saying to Gaz, I was putting in tranches, never told him the amount, but I think he probably figured I was putting like £50 a pop, and it's just like, no. Like I was really going in deep straight away, but I wasn't putting all my money in straight away because I needed the comfort. But whilst I was doing this, the Bitcoin price was firing up because Michael Saylor was buying in.
Yeah, no, I knew you were going in big because you know when someone gets it. Like that's the thing. Like I went back and read those messages that I was telling you about in 2016. I was like, was I just being a bit like a freaking Dogecoin guy, going like, oh, go up, like freaking buy it, lol. Like I was like, no, I was actually quite structured in what I was telling you. Like I was telling you the system was fucked. I was telling you this is the new evolution of money. Like it was all there. But really, Saylor has a great quote on this, which is like you hate Bitcoin until you love it. And when you read,
I wouldn't say I hated it.
You did. You would have hated it because you didn't buy it. Like because all the FUD is in your head.
Get it.
And the thing is, like,
I
when you
honestly
see other,
didn't get it.
yeah, and when you see other people making money, like you resent it. Because I was a Bitcoin hater. I completely admit it. Like when I was watching the Winklevoss twins make shit tons of money, I hated them for it, and I hated Bitcoin. I was like, what the hell is this scam like making people billionaires for? This is a load of bullshit. And until the day it clicked, and then I just flipped to love it. And I mean, that's the so when you read the same, then I kind of like went back and read the same information I'd read before with a different mindset, and then suddenly it all makes sense. But when you're reading something with your opinions already predetermined, and you already know that you don't like this thing, you literally hear what you want to hear, and it doesn't matter how because if you read something like obviously 90% of the information written about Bitcoin is negative anyway. If you actually stumble across one of the 10% that is positive, but you're a hater, you just assume the person's a scammer and they're pumping their bags, and you just dismiss it and click off. It's so easy.
I feel you need the circumstance for it all to make sense, and it was the pandemic, kind of like that kind of extreme for me, which actually made it make sense. And it was probably like the rhinestones, the what else did they have in there? Beads, you know, just those examples, not far into the book, and I just went, oh, this has happened before. And it made perfect sense. I remember I was about halfway through the book and I was still pumping money in. And I messaged the group and I said, if you read one book, read this. And Donna was just like, no. I said, seriously, it's an amazing book. Just read it. You'll learn something. And I think you kind of went into the same kind of like hole, the rabbit hole.
Yeah. But again, I'd been studying money, I think, well before that. But I'd, again, done something else because Gaz had told me about it. And I'd kind of gone in 2017 to a certain extent. And then the crash happened. That was it. The crash happened. And I was just like, oh my God, because I remember I had my spreadsheet, I had everything set up. I had the direct debits ready. I had my Coinbase account set up when it was nice and easy to get in. And then the crash came about. And then I got scared and I didn't know anything about Bitcoin enough to be like, oh, this is perfect. I'm picking it up at a discount. Before then, I remember because as our business, we signed Mt. Gox.
Yeah.
And at the time, they gave us 32 grand. I remember they gave us 32 grand and they didn't really use much of it. The obviously what happened and we took that money to book. The business wound up and was closed and that was it. And again, that kind of still left. Yeah, they paid.
Yeah,
they paid and they were going to give us more. I actually remember, I just tell a lie. They started off doing pretty well. And we were then going to get a little bit more of a prepay. And then a friend who obviously works with us that signed them, he was just like, yeah, do you know what? I'm going to buy a little bit of this. And I was just like, oh, okay, yeah. But it wasn't easy back then either. And then if you're going to go and buy a little bit, but then the business that you're going to go and buy a little bit from then ends up going pop, you're like, yeah, I'm going to stay away from that. And that's exactly what I did.
Like, it's something like they were waiting for the founder to get off a plane to arrest him. And literally, I was meant to have a call with him later that day. I remember it because I was meant to be supporting him to help him go live.
Yeah, I mean, maybe had it have been back then, I would have got a little bit and then carried on. I was also going out to Cyprus in those events in Cyprus and hearing about Bitcoin, but I still didn't feel like anybody could tell me enough to really convince me, because I think the price was like $60 per coin. It was, ridiculously cheap back then. And I just didn't do it. And I don't regret not doing it because I still feel like people should only put money into things that they understand. And, that's why hopefully through these podcasts, they can kind of get some sort of understanding before they part with their money and just think, oh yeah, well, those guys seem to be all right. Let me do it.
That's the thing you've got to get over. I think when you're getting into it is it's not too much. I lost count the amount of times I said that. I think I said it at 500. I think I said it at about 1,200. As it was going up, 3,000, 7,000. Every single time I was like, wow, it's too expensive now. But if I'd have done it the time before, and I got to a point where I kind of released that. What's the word, like that chain of I can't bear to buy in at that price because I could have bought in so much more. Once I just set that chain off and I bought in and I was like, okay, right, it's done now. And then you wait 1 month, 2 months, whatever it is. It can come back. It can crash. All of this, but when you see it going up and when you zoom out on that chart, from that's when you can get in. That whole zoom out, look at the bigger picture, look at the trajectory. That's your first point of comfort, even if you don't understand it.
I remember like putting in money at record amounts several times, and I'm sitting there kind of going, half my brain's going, "What are you doing, Ross?" Like,
yeah.
What are you doing? And then the other half's just going,
I'm glad you said that.
You know what it is. you understand this. This is the future, like, and if it's not, you've got, you know, you're backing this because you understand it. You understand what good it can do. But it was quite hard to get over the mindset. And when we got the recent all-time high, I barely noticed. I think it's someone else messaged me about it. That's how little I check the price now. I have the little counter on my home screen on my phone, but it's not really up to date. You have to refresh it. It messes up. But I don't really take much notice of it. And so when I was told, I was like, oh. And whereas at the start, I was checking it 3-4 times a day. Well, probably hour.
I still do.
That's one thing I hardly ever check it. I probably get updated from someone else as opposed to me checking it and looking at it. And going back to what you were saying there, Ross, about, you know, thinking, what am I doing? When the crash of 17-18 happened, and I was still saving money, and then I decided to go into property instead. I was thinking, should I not, like, carry on? No, don't be a fool. That's just throwing more money after, like, good money after bad, even though I'd already gone in, and I was prepared to lose that money because it was a couple of grand at the time. But I was like, no, don't do it. But maybe I should have, and had that. I wish I'd have had that conviction.
But that's what I think you have to be at peace with. You have to be at peace with the fact that you didn't, and then look forwards and don't look backwards. Because if you do that, if you keep thinking if, then that plays in your mind too much, and the if becomes less of an issue. You know, all those people that could have bought in at 100 and then could have bought in at 1200, and then they did. They're not thinking now, today, oh, if I'd only got in at 500, you know, and that will extrapolate out. So it becomes less of an issue.
I think it helps. That's why I think a lot of people end up being haters, because they find it, they find Bitcoin at a certain price, and then they'll see it 3 and 4 months later, and it'll be double, triple, quadruple the price. And now they almost they resent the fact, and then they either just hate it and want to just dismiss it and forget the fact that, oh God, how much money have I just potentially lost there? They either want to hate on it, or they might flip to, I'll wait for the dip. And we all know what happens when you wait for a dip, right? Like, it's like, right, so it's gone up by 4x. You're now waiting for a 75% dip, and then you get to buy it at the price that you dismissed it at. Like, it's not. And then the ironic thing is, even when that dip happens, it's like, well, now there's blood in the streets. Like, everyone's terrified. There's a load of FUD around. There's probably a reason why Bitcoin's dropped by 75%. Who's buying it at that? You have to be a hardcore Bitcoiner to be buying a 75% drawdown. The newbies don't get in after a 75% drawdown. There's no chance.
I'd buy
newbies buy on the way up. Like, my entire buy was at all-time highs. When I went all in, all-time high Bitcoin. Bitcoin had never been higher. At 1200, when I went in, that was the all-time high. I was buying it. It'd never been like £1 more expensive than when I bought it. And I think it's almost the same for like all 4 of us here. We all bought pretty much all-time highs. It's like, that's when you get in, and you just got to understand that as a newbie, you will buy the all-time high, but it isn't the ultimate high. Is freaking into the tens of millions, if not billions. Like, once fiat collapses and hyperinflates, that's the top. That's the top. Like, if you're early, like, just accept the fact you're going to buy an all-time high. No one buys the dips, and until you're a hardcore Bitcoiner, like, and then you buy the dips, and it was great. Like, once I was like already all in and like earning a bit of money on the side, when that bear market happened, it was beautiful. Like, I loved March 2020 when the freaking virus hit and like Bitcoin plummeted. I had some spare cash on the side, just every spare penny. I just grabbed it together. I got some random bank account numbers and freaking went all into Bitcoin. And I've sent you the screenshots a couple of times into the chat around those buys around that time. It was glorious. I was picking up, like, I couldn't believe how cheap it was. I was like, this is nearly at the price I brought it for back in 2016. What the hell has happened? It's nearly come back. I couldn't.
And we're not even a year on.
Yeah, exactly. A year on, and it's like freaking, you can't even recognize the price now.
No.
And meanwhile, back in March, the pieces were only starting to be put together for me. Like, that's what caused it. But then it still accelerated because people like you went, "Oh, cheap Bitcoin," and it popped up, and I went, it funded up, and I went, oh, I don't know. And I was just like, I'm doing it. And it's just like, but it kept on thundering up. I was like, oh.
You know what was interesting as well? I came across a film, which I'm sure everyone's watched, is Banking on Bitcoin. And even in that film, you see the price rise from like $400, I think maybe at the time, to $800. And you think, just in this space of an hour and 20 minutes or so, that and obviously it's a space over time, the price has gone up. I think, yeah, maybe I should get involved. So I do think just make that plunge.
But I think the amazing thing within the last 6 months is to get to a single Bitcoin, owning it is out of reach of pretty much most standard people. You know, it's not going to happen. And it seems like more companies are investing money directly into Bitcoin, and also we're getting ETFs coming into play on some of the biggest investment companies like Fidelity. I think it's JP Morgan. So I struggle to believe that we're going to have as big a drawbacks as there were previously. So it just seems like there's too much company money in there.
I don't know, because those guys will have automatic things. So equally, as big as they are, the bigger the people are in. If there is any price pullbacks, then it could escalate quicker. So,
but they control it. You know, people like MicroStrategy have got such big holdings that they have got a big sway on the price of Bitcoin, which is phenomenal. I don't know if that's happened before. There's some individuals, some of the earlier individuals who have that amount of Bitcoin, but Michael Saylor's a bit of a beast on his own.
Yeah, well, I think the argument for why companies will sell, because I still believe human beings are human beings. Like things don't change. Like history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And we've had 2 cycles already. Exactly the same's happened. Now the buyers are different. The buyers are different every time, but still the same 87% drawdown happened from the top. I think the same thing will happen for the company. And there's multiple reasons. Like human beings still run companies, and they will still panic, and they will still panic sell. We've already seen that. Someone bought 25 million of Bitcoin. I think at about 20K, went up to 30K, came back down to 25. They panic sold. They panic sold the 20% dip, and then 2 weeks later it's at 30 odd, and they're like caught with their pants down, and now they're out of the market. They're done. And so that's an example. That's 25 million, and it's a company with a board. Yeah. That's a serious amount of cash. But then also you see the fact that companies, when the price of Bitcoin appreciates as much as it does, so let's say that, Tesla and stuff, like I think Tesla and MicroStrategy are going to be, they're single owned companies by individuals. So Michael Saylor and Elon, they get it. They're just going to override their board. They got no say. Random other PLC companies, if they invest like 100 million into Bitcoin, and then we appreciate by a 10x and end up having $1 billion, there's going to be a risk now. The risk of having $1 billion on their balance sheet of Bitcoin is going to just be a case of they're going to have a lot of pressure to go, look, we need to reinvest that in the business. There's no point sat on this amount of cash. We're supposed to be funneling it into product, into sales. And plus, what if the Bitcoin price does go down? Like, we just need to rebalance. We've seen that even on ARK investment. The only reason they sell their Tesla and their Bitcoin shares is because they have to keep less than a 10% allocation of each asset. So as each asset does really well, they have to keep selling it to peg it back to 10%. Yeah. So I think that can be a trigger. Like when we get a 10x in Bitcoin and we go to 500K, there's going to be a load of companies in there going, holy fucking shit, we have so much dollars worth of Bitcoin sat on a balance sheet now, we just have to rebalance. Like, it's just crazy. Like 10 times the value of this business is sat in Bitcoin. Like we have to just be sensible and rebalance. And if all companies rebalance at a similar time, boom, we get an 8% dip.
Yeah, because they'll still have money, they'll still have treasury in Bitcoin. But like you said, it'll just be a smaller amount because they only need X amount before then it becomes, I suppose, disposable money or Bitcoin, which can then be invested in different things within the business, which could improve. It could be buying a building, it could be technology, it could be staff hires and estimating what the lifetime value or cost will be of that individual.
How do you feel if it was going to go back down? Like now I'm in a much safer place. I'm in a much greater place. If it was if I had an 80% drop tomorrow, I'd be like, yes. But how do you guys feel?
Yeah,
I wouldn't tell the wife.
yeah. I'm surprised you've told her anyway.
I'm surprised.
Oh,
That's your first mistake. How many of the 24 words does she know?
none.
Neither.
But she asked me one day, and I told her, and she kind of just looked at me, and I was just like, "Yeah, it's going to go up. Like this is a safe investment." Well,
Number go up.
Yeah,
You told her how much you invested, and then you told her how much it is now, and it was all good, right?
The divorce settlement's going to be awesome.
She's
Yeah,
like,
she's
are
loving
you going to take some money out? I said, no, 'cause I think this is a 5-year investment minimum. Like, I just see it 5 years. There's going to be a lot of changes in the world, especially at the end of this pandemic, and also the rising inflation. Well, sorry, constant inflation. It's causing some changes. You know, there's people are unsettled. It's unsettled because of the pandemic, being locked away like caged animals. Then also because of, well, the poor value. I think it was Darnell touched on it earlier. People are unhappy. It's unfair. You know, you look at things like minimum wage. There's a minimum wage, which is to make sure we try and keep people out of poverty. But what do? We keep on inflating the cash supply. So their groceries, their costs, they all go up. Gas, electricity, bread, milk, it all goes up. So that, whatever it was, you know, was it £5?
People are working harder for less.
Yeah, it was £5 something years ago, and they can't afford to live on it anymore. So I understand why the minimum wage needs to rise, but it's all caused by the flawed monetary system, and no one seems to understand that. But we're in a vicious circle until you start going, we're not inflating. That's it. We're going to have that same problem where minimum wage keeps on going up, and you end up with the middle being squeezed. The rich getting richer, the middle being squeezed, the poorer, well, getting poorer until they actually get something like living wage or minimum wage put in place.
Or just being told, here's some money, do what you're doing, stay at home.
Don't you love us so much? We look after you so well.
Correct. But when you see people like that, I think, you know, it's then going to start eating into what would be then the lowest bracket of the middle class, and then they fall down because it could easily be somebody that loses their job, has to sign on, then they get this money. Well, hold on, what am I looking for another job for? Where getting a little bit more money over here or getting enough to get by. I like it down here, and so on and so on. And then I just feel like, to your point, that middle class would just become squeezed, and then you've just got one or the other. And where you fall is up to you and what you do with your money and time.
So you kind of think if we went into a different industry, obviously we work for a tech company, so we're relatively safe. We can work remotely. We can we can interact with our customers remotely. Our customers can still operate, so mostly e-commerce. But if we're in something like logistics, well, actually logistics probably isn't the best example, but something which actually involves us being in a shop, running a pub or whatever it is, be absolutely crippled by this.
Yeah.
You know, so fortunate to ultimately fall into what we're doing.
Yeah, well, I hate to say it, like it's one of the big conspiracy theories, but the more it starts to carry on playing out, it's like this is a test for global socialism. Like that model has been proven to not work. Like if you're the powers that be that are close to the money printer, then yeah, it's fine. You can live like a king. You can completely control, but you need to program people to just to give them all the same amount of money. Whether you're a doctor or you sweep the streets or any job in between, everyone gets paid the same amount. There's no promotions. There's no, you never aspire to have more power, more influence, to get on. There's a government and it's huge. And there's a couple of guys at the top of that decide, make all the decisions. Everyone else just goes about their business. And and I always thought that was a big conspiracy, that like, that is what the powers that be are trying to work towards. And then you see the last 12 months and you realize how clever it's kind of been to roll out that test. And it's really worrying, the fact that it's been accepted so readily. Like I've got some mates that have got jobs that, to by and large, you know, we're in our mid to late 30s now. You kind of know whether your career is going somewhere or not at this point. So a lot of them are in careers where they've kind of topped out. They're there, they're done. So the fact that they got to sit at home for a year on 8% money, they're happy. They're actually happy. They're as far from fighting this as you can get. They've got families. The house is all right. And if anything, it's taken the pressure off. Before it was always, what are you going to get, a bigger house or a bigger car, or like, what's the next big thing? This has completely gone, oh no, we're all screwed. We're all on 80% money now. This is what it is. We don't have holidays. You can't upgrade anything because the money is just totally fixed. And bizarrely, the fact that so many people are stressed, but that's the genius thing. The reason why people are stressed is because inflation is making people stressed, devaluing your wages, everything's going up. So all that's been like a cause, like people are stressed because they don't have enough money. And then they've released that stress by going, just chill, sit at home, we'll give you free money. And you don't have the pressure of needing to up each other anymore, because everyone's just, wherever you were, it's paused. Like whatever house you're in, it's musical chairs, everyone sit down. And bizarrely, a lot of people, like, it feels like the majority, are kind of okay with that. They're just glad the pressure's off. They're not happy that they're not in the house they always thought they're going to be in, all that kind of stuff. But now the pressure's off. They don't need to be in that house. It's impossible to get in the house because they're not allowed out of the house. And it's bizarrely, it's working, it's being accepted, and super scary when
It's so funny you say that, because there's so many factors. I think again, that's a layered factor there. You're not allowed on holiday. Well, you can go on holiday, just pay this 5k tax. Well, that's out of reach for most people. So yeah, we'll just stay at home. Well, we could always move house. And again, Rishi nailed that one by removing the stamp duty. Brilliant. House prices crept up. And so those people that were in that ability to move did move, but they paid a premium on that property.
Yeah, and the thing is, just on that, very quickly on that point, why do you think they why do you think they wanted the house prices to go up? Like, that's the main portfolio. The guys in charge own 70% of the fucking property in the UK. So of course they wanted that market liquid. They're like, oh yeah, let's fucking grease the wheels of this bad boy. But like, do they give a shit about the airlines? They give a shit about the holiday companies? They give a shit about the local restaurants? No, they don't give a fuck about them. They just made sure the property market kept going. That's where they hold all their wealth, because they don't know about Bitcoin, and they know money's fucked. So they don't have loads of their millions in the bank. They have their millions in property. So they made sure the one market they're invested in kept going.
All day became essential, didn't it? And then, actually, this is going really well. Let's extend it for a further 6 months, because they're lapping this up.
Yeah. Follow the money. Follow the money.
I do wonder whether they can extend furlough again.
Well, they can do anything. That's the thing.
I just think there's got to be a point, because I think there's a proportion of the population who are starting to get very, very angry. I remember was it Belfast the riots were going on? My wife was like, oh, it's because of Brexit. I'm like, no, it's because people are fucking pissed off for being locked down for the last year. And then that's happened as well. And that's put them over the edge. Like, people, they'd see Brexit, they'd be like, oh, that's a bit shit. Let's try and get to be part of Ireland or separate or whatever. Yeah. Whereas now it's just like, I'm fucking angry. There's so many riots and protests going on around the world at the moment, and everyone is very mad. And I just wonder whether this is the point where they go, let's stop and start the world again. And that's my hope anyway. I think if it goes beyond October, I probably will believe Gaz completely, man.
No. Well, the thing is that what they're going to transition to next is that they'll let us out of our homes. But what they needed, the pandemic, essentially, what they need is, it's like it's written in the sovereign individual, right? So they need to lock you in your countries. They need the money. Like, we are productive. They need our production. They need people to like wait their tables, clean their toilets, work in their factories. Like, we can't be locked at home forever. Like, that doesn't make sense as an economy. Correct. So they're going to let us out, but they don't want us to leave. They need to make it completely impossible for us to leave. The pandemic has done that beautifully. So the next stage of bringing in the next set of controls, they will let us out in a phased approach. They can't do it too quickly because it exposes the scam. So they'll do it slowly. But the next big thing that they're going to scare everyone with is climate change. That's coming right along the side. And then suddenly that's going to give them the right to go, look, whole industries need to be redesigned. We need to completely chop our carbon footprint. So not only are they going to charge you for tests and vaccines to leave the country anyway, they're also going to give that an excuse to like put up the fees for airlines hugely as well. So like all these cheap airlines, they're just going to die. You know, it's going to be
Even though
thousands of
climate
pounds.
change has had like a little bit of a respite for the past year because nobody's been going anywhere, but yet it's all of a sudden like a bad thing.
Oh yeah, it's
But
Well, you kind of go
you know,
down
the
that.
logic will be, well, hold on, why is there been a climate change? You know, we've been good. So many less airlines going on and so much less carbon footprint with people not going to work and being sat at home. And now you're going to tell me that climate change has come about and people will still buy into it. And like you said before, they'll just accept it. Yeah, okay. Doesn't sound right, but okay.
I'm not 100% convinced because, like I said, I think everyone's so pissed off at the moment. But it does.
They'll let you out to work. You'll be back to work. You just won't be able to go on holiday, and it'll be very difficult to leave the country. So you're trapped in. So and then they'll just raise the taxes, and then slowly but surely it'll be a case of, look, we need the Great Reset. You know, if you go on the WEF, the World Economic Forum website, it's all fucking there. They literally they post a load of things going, in the future you'll own nothing and be happy. That's their big quote. They literally say that. And they're like, and don't worry about it. You'll rent everything, but you'll be happy. It's like, right, if I'm renting everything, who the fuck owns all this? And it's like, are you the ones that own it? Like, I think I'd be more happy if I'm you. Like, I'm not sure about I'd be that happy renting everything, but it's pretty screwed. And then they're basically like layering these things on. And they tried to bring climate change in 10 years ago, and it hasn't stuck. Like, they tried to make a load of changes, and all they got was, I think, McDonald's and freaking Burger King had to ban their freaking plastic straws. That's about as much of an impact they made. It's the only thing we accepted. Whereas they got the pandemic in, they tested that one, and holy shit, it worked. So now we're all nice and trained. They're like, let's just layer in climate change on top nicely, and another set of restrictions will be put in, another set of taxes will be put on, and before you know it, we've accepted it, because once you let them in an inch, they just keep moving. And it's exactly what they did with the pandemic. It was 2 weeks, flatten the curve. Before you know it, a year later, now it's like you're not allowed out until there's not a single case for COVID ever in the entire world. Like, what the hell? That we meant to be flattening the curve originally. Like, you've massively moved the goalposts, but you only notice that when you zoom out. Like, when it happens bit by bit, they literally move it inch by inch by inch by inch. It's only for the people that step up and zoom out, and you look back to where they originally said they were coming from, you realize this has been a series of lies getting us deeper and deeper in to a world where
we've got enough people around that will be prepared to really stand up, because we're not really that type of country to stand up. We do for a little bit and then we get bored, or we lose the heart. Yeah. Whereas, you've seen it in America, they'll riot for days. You see it in Ireland, they've rioted for nearly 2 weeks now. Have we really got the heart to do 2 days plus?
The British Empire.
And protests haven't been in the media. Like, there's been various protests in London, haven't been in the media at all.
Do we need, and I'm not advocating violence, but do we need to get violent for it to be in the media? Again, I'm not advocating it, but ultimately,
if it gets violent, they just put COVID conspiracy theorists. Literally that's our answer.
Yeah.
So I read one about Keir Starmer and that pub landlord, was it yesterday? She said, the average age of death is 82 or 83. It's above the average age of death from COVID. And Keir Starmer's response was, he's a conspiracy theorist, and this is made up. And it's just like, no, it's off the ONS website. It is from the ONS website.
Like, well, hold on, I'll go and edit that, and then it'll be different.
Yeah, but it won't be on the website tomorrow.
Yeah. They're like, we've taken this stat off because it's misleading. I remember that the CDC did the same thing. In America, they put a stat on there that 94% of people that died of COVID in the US actually had at least one more comorbidity. And so basically it meant that only 6% of the deaths were 100% COVID. The other 94% were like, it could be anything. And they took the stat off because they were like, oh, it's misleading. So it's not misleading at all.
It's
bang on.
Here's another great one, which the BBC buried because the BBC are pretty bad for their poor news coverage. They said, what was it? It was in an article about how COVID discriminates against the disabled. 2/3 of the people who died of COVID within the first wave were disabled. The question is, why?
Yeah, exactly.
So why? Because the average age was 83. Of the
Yeah,
deaths.
so freaking old people are classed as disabled, you freaking retards. Like, come on.
Yeah. They were too scared to go to the hospital.
No one's asking these questions. Like, it feels like nobody else is sitting there going, "Oh, yeah, okay, but why?" Or okay, what does that mean? No one wants to ask. No one wants to stick their head up and be like, "Oh no, I advocate killing Granny. It's fine."
I'm still in the camp of it's a massive overstep. They've really messed up, but they can't go back to make themselves look stupid. I'm not convinced by Gaz yet, but if we go back into another lockdown, if we have further furlough, that is when my point where I go, this means nothing. Like the one over this winter, hospitals are flooded. Then the ONS stats were released. No, they're not. About the government, oh yeah, we just don't want hospitals to get flooded. And it's just like, you just changed your tact and no one noticed. But I just feel like they kind of have, I'm hoping that this is it. And it's just the fact they've overreacted because, the actual planned response for any kind of pandemic is shield the vulnerable. That is the actual plan. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is the plan. So there's very few countries which actually followed that. Whereas people who wanted to follow that were labeled as conspiracy theorists again. And that's what I find absolutely maddening is this was the plan. This has been rehearsed for decades, maybe even longer, because in the Hong Kong flu in the 60s, they just let it spread because there's not a lot which you can do. So it's a bit infuriating. We seem to go on a massive tangent towards lockdowns and pandemics away from Bitcoin, haven't we?
Yeah, well, we can bring it back because I was thinking, like, when Danielle was mentioning, like, how do we stop this? Do you protest and all that stuff? And in reality, look, the number one protest to any stuff that is government led is to buy Bitcoin. It really is. That's how you damage them. Like, take your fiat, earn it, and convert it into sound money. Like, if we all do that, if everyone did that, the ultimate protest, lockdown, and all their bullshit controls end tomorrow, because suddenly they have no power, they have no money. They like if all their staff want to be paid in Bitcoin, not in pounds or dollars, they're screwed. They have to stop, and suddenly they can't pay their own wages. They all suddenly they have to freaking start grinding to a halt. Or the furlough money, they can't furlough the entire population and pay 80% of the wages. If the entire population would be paid in Bitcoin, they can't do it.
That is their control. Absolutely, that is their major one control.
Yeah.
The narrative of pensions, the narrative of money, and the narrative of tax as well. We'll just tax you on it, and but we can give you this free money if you stay at home for us. Oh, okay, right, yeah, well, we'll do that then. It all goes back down to that control.
It's the best savings account in the world to protect against that. So that's the ultimate protect.
It's not Doge. It's not Dogecoin.
Because the thing that like blew my mind was when they printed like the best part of $1 trillion in the UK like last year. I just Googled it. I had no clue what the income tax for the UK was, like how much they collected. And it turns out it's about 70 billion a year is what they collect in income tax. And they printed $1 trillion in one go. What? And so I just worked that out quickly. I just went back over the last 10 years. So 10 years worth of income tax, which, most of us have been paying 40%, so 40p on every single pound we earn goes into that pot. 10 years worth of doing that, they printed in one fucking day.
Yeah.
Like, why the fuck am I even paying tax if you can do that? Like, all the problems that existed in the UK around education, around health, around all this stuff, they've always said there's no money in the pot. Nothing we can do. It's just
no magic money tree.
Exactly.
There's no magic money tree.
Like, maybe we can do it next year if you vote me in again for another 4 years, and maybe I'll still freaking up the price of taxes. And we need to like cut like a load of people here and like move money around, freaking all that stuff. And literally this pandemic happens and magically they print 10 years worth of tax money in one day and it fixes every problem.
Phenomenal. What's the what you quoted the income tax? What's the overall tax income of a year? Do you know what that figure is? Because that'd be quite an interesting one to know.
No, I don't, because obviously that includes corporations and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
But
so you got VAT and you got various other things because it kind of leads us down a different point. You were saying about 40 pence of every pound which you earn is taxed. Well, obviously you've got the sliding scale up to that once you hit certain thresholds. But on top of that, we talked about this previously. You've got VAT 20%. You've got fuel tax. You've got what else have we got in there? The various other taxes. So anything which you buy. So you want to go and buy a Mars bar. That Mars bar has had to go through corporation tax. Each of its workers have had to pay their tax, and they have to pay their fuel to get. So you kind of think that actually trail of buying that Mars bar of, say, I don't know how much a Mars bar is now because I don't eat them.
£1 5p in co-op.
I thought they were like 30 pence when I last bought one.
How much? Say that again. How much?
£1 5p in co-op.
But you think
That might be the duo.
How much of that Mars bar is actually is the cost of a Mars bar? Then how much of it is actually profit in the end? So how much is actually going on that product if you take away all the tax sitting around that? I think that's what's ultimately flawed is we've got this big government. I think Conservatives are meant to be minimal government, Labour are meant to be big government, but still Conservatives are still eating all this money, and you pay this inflated price against any product, any service, and it's mainly tax. It's the most insane thing when you actually think about that and you break down anything which you do in life. Like this mouse cost me 10 or 20 pounds, and the majority of that will be fed through tax.
Yeah, well, it's like, how do you get money to invest? Like always, that was another thing that like made the penny drop for me. Is I was getting pretty much, it's 50% of the money that I got was tax, right? It's the income tax, but then you got national insurance and student loans and all that kind of stuff. So you pretty much, you take your 50p and then you go and invest it, and then you manage to actually like fluke it in the early days, and you actually make some money. And they want another 20% of the 50p that you just invested, and you're just like, they're getting me everywhere. And then, like you said, Ross, once you then go and take that money that you invested and you make a profit and you go off and want to spend it, it gets you don't see it. It's taxed again. And when you actually really figure it out, it's probably, I would be surprised if it's more than 20p to the pound that of what the money you earn, you actually get to spend on the product. There's government's taking their piece on every single little transaction you make. The government's in there somewhere, and literally, like, you think you're earning a lot of money.
Then use that money, you're still paying some sort of tax on whatever you're buying, typically as well.
Yeah.
There is, whilst we've touched on governments, one shining light out there which you may have come across, and that's the mayor of Miami, Francis Suarez, and he seems very pro people, pro Bitcoin, and pro technology as well. I don't really know too much about him, but I would like to highlight that not everybody or not every politician is bad, because he seems like he's trying to do the right thing. And with 86% majority when he was voted in, it seems like he's got the ear of the people.
Yeah, I'm going to really like watch with interest how this plays out, because the thing is, we've already had Trump, right? And as much as people hated Trump, like, he was, like, genuinely, he was not the system. He did not play by the rules. So we saw what happened to him. Like, he got impeached twice and is run out of office, right? And like gets cancelled from all social media. Like, he is gone. Like, he really paid for not following the system. Like, he didn't play ball. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens to this mayor of Miami, because I think he's obviously not controversial.
I've not heard nothing from him, by the way.
What about the governors as well? Because they seem to be going against the states, so against Biden and what's his name, Fauci. You've got the governor of Texas and the governor of Florida. Like, it's Texas Abbott, and then I can't remember the Florida one. Like, they've literally gone. Florida went, no, we're going to do the actual planned pandemic response. So we're going to open up. We're going to shield the vulnerable. And they've gone, oh, we got a little spike at the start, which is as a virus spreads, but after that, it's kind of flatlined, and we've actually done moderately well. So we do direct comparison to California. You know, people are locked at home in California. The rates are higher in California, and at Florida, they're out about doing whatever they want, no masks. So they haven't been cancelled as well. There's obviously smear campaigns run about the through the media, but nothing's been done. And then also Texas.
That's why I say it's going to be interesting to watch it play out. I think Texas is just being Texas. Texas, like, they walk around, they open carry freaking AK-47s, and that's how they think life should be. Like, they really do believe in self-sovereignty, like, and fair play. Like, I kind of admire that
Texas is that state that could be by itself if it wanted to. It earns so much money. It could say, right, do you know what, America, we're getting divorced today. And even though it's landlocked, it could easily be like, yeah, we're Texas country and that's America.
So what's
Texas an interesting one?
Taxes are super low. I think it's like 0% capital gains in Texas.
Yeah.
While a load of people move there from California, where it's like 40 to 50% cap gains. So people
and you get to live in some kind of hovel in San Francisco, whereas in Texas, obviously, a lot more land. I get to live somewhere reasonable.
Yeah.
What's the kind of, you're saying that Texas is very rich. What's it rich off? Is it oil or
oil? Yeah, oil.
And lovely barbecues as well.
Well, classic. yeah, absolutely. From what I understand, I think it's that oil money.
Yeah, but they're the two of interest for me because Sweden failed to everyone failed to take any notice of Sweden for some reason, whereas because they were different than Europe, they were the same as Scandinavia or whatever. Whereas you got Texas and Florida, they are next to other states. They're outperforming states which are next to them. You know, they are at the same humidity. They've got the same amount of sunlight. They've got the same population density. So there's no counter argument against that. So watching those two, I'm kind of going, there's my hope.
I know. Weirdly, I've seen the interview with Fauci though, and he just goes, we need to wait a couple of months to see whether it works or not. And literally, he's just buying time. I'm like, by the time he's bought enough time, like it'll be winter again, the numbers are going to start going up because freaking flu season's back. You know, like this is just a self-fulfilling prophecy because if you tie a pandemic to the flu, like it comes back every year. Like you just, there's like 3 months and you just have to like bullshit for 9 and then you get proven right again three months later. You're like, oh, lockdown did work because look, we unlocked and it's come back. You're like, oh my, like literally it's almost like funny to watch it if it wasn't so devastatingly freaking brutal to the fact that we're all locked inside right now. It's just
this is what I didn't get. Like again, it's such a simple concept, right? That the normal flu comes around every year without fail. And lo and behold, now we've got this new flu and it comes back around and we're going to unlock people. And then maybe around the winter months, October, November, December, people might start getting ill again. Is it the flu or is it this new flu, the pandemic? It's back again.
All that while no one's asking the question why the flu is totally gone.
Correct.
And also, here's a question which has not been answered anywhere. What has happened to the people who've had denial of care? You should be looking at a doorstop. So literally, it's going like that. It's getting thicker as time goes by. And that's what I'm really interested in is when's that figure going to emerge? Because these people who've had cancer, who haven't had treatment, these people who've been too scared to go to hospital for heart problems, where have they gone?
It's starting to creep out now. Actually, I saw the first article ever on the BBC a couple of days ago, and it said that waiting lists are the highest they've been for 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then add that onto a flu season this winter.
Well, exactly. Yeah. Like, the crazy thing is, like, when you look back over all the headlines over the last winters, over the last 10 years, every single headline says that the hospitals are at capacity. Because it guess what? Like, it's like a business, right? You don't run a business where your capacity is like 50 and you run it 100, because that's just inefficient. You're wasting 50% of your energy. So you run hospitals at about 80% capacity throughout the year. And then when the winter months come, it pops to 100. And sometimes it can get over the 100 and you start to like go, shit, we need to really like freaking get together here. But then you know full well, once flu season goes away, it drops back down again. So it's that capacity is completely normal, and it's the most efficient way of running a hospital. It's ideally you would just go, fuck it, well, let's run it at 120 constantly, and then we're never going to reach capacity. But you are going to have doctors and nurses literally standing around doing nothing, but you're doing that just in case there's a spike. Not efficient, but whatever. But it's
well, we got to see some really sweet TikToks this year.
They're still coming out.
Really? I thought there was been such a backlash against them.
Oh my God, they did another one the other day and had drone shots in and everything. I was really admiring it. It had like 15.
It was you.
Was that?
It was you.
That's the only drone job I would ever reject. It's like freaking TikTok, freaking nurses dancing about, and they should be doing their job.
But that's the thing, they've got nothing else to do apart from them routines.
For the next pod, just think of ideas ahead. Do we need to have a ban on the pandemic?
Yeah, well, I think we'll like talk ourselves out of it. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
This is the first one. How about we have a switch of topic then? Because literally it came up. I was like literally watching it just before we came on about the Super League. What's the thoughts on all that?
Well, I was going to ask about this as well, or kind of bring it up, because when we were talking about corruption and government, and we're actually seeing it everywhere. And I don't believe that there's an industry where corruption has not occurred. So we're seeing it play out right now. So I haven't really personally looked into it that much. I haven't really got that much of a view. I've just been mega busy, so I've not really, looked into why people are so up in arms. So I'd be happy to listen to you guys.
There's two things, isn't there? Like it's the Spider-Man meme, isn't it? Where they're both standing there pointing at each other, and one's UEFA and one's the Super League, and the hypocrisy is just absolutely ridiculous. People forget that the UEFA Champions League has been only around for 20 years, if that, maybe 30 years.
Maybe a bit longer, yeah.
European Cup only started in
95, 94.
Yeah,
was when the Champions League switched names.
But the European Cup was only 1955. And that didn't pop up because they wanted to help the fans. That popped up because they saw that there was an opportunity to play more games and make more money. So the irony that now, just because it's however many years later, somebody's turned around and gone, oh, well, we want to play more games and make more money. You haven't really got a leg to stand on to have a go at them. I think they're both as bad as each other. And it's bad for football and it's bad for the fan, but you can't sit there and be UEFA and be calling them out, whinging about wanting to make money. And it's ridiculous.
I think it's more about the non-relegation of the founding teams, which is the problem. So, like, if it was a new competition and they slimmed it down to just the champions in Europe, I think fair play. Champions League, UEFA again, and the Cup Winners' Cup. It was a great form. If you win the league, you get to play in the European Cup. If you win a cup, Cup Winners' Cup. And if you're high up in the league, you get the UEFA. And I thought it made all three competitions absolutely amazing. As a kid, I was excited. Well, I never got to see the European Cup, but in the Cup Winners' Cup or the UEFA, I was really excited to see Liverpool play. But it's just like great experience. But then when 4 teams going to the Champions League, it's like they're not champions. And then the UEFA and the Cup Winners' Cup just became rubbish. No one wanted to be in it. It devalued the other competitions.
But UEFA this week have announced that they're making the Champions League more teams, and it's going to equate to a total of like 100 fixtures a season. So they're honestly all as bad as each other. They're watching Neville and Carragher have a meltdown on Sky when Sky are perfectly happy to send Liverpool fans down to the arse end of Norwich for a 12:30 kickoff on a Saturday morning. They don't care about the fans, and playing that card now, so many people are lapping it up, and it's not Sky have invested so much money in this league. If the 6 best teams in the league turn around and walk away, what do you think Sky's money is going to be worth?
Well, I think it's also the fact that they've thrown out the rights, haven't they? Like the rights for this football. Like Sky have got it all sewn up, and this new league suddenly it's open season again. So they're terrified of losing it. And I do love like the virtue signaling that I've seen online. Like I saw Gary Lineker just before I came on here. He went, just to make it clear, I will never work a Super League game if it actually happens. And you just go, wow, that he really is like pinning his opinion to the mask here, because at the moment, the only genuine objective I've heard is literally that relegation thing. The fact that 15 teams get in the league and never can get relegated, that is bad. That's the American franchise model. You have 15 brands, and you have 5 token teams that can fight to get in there each year, but the 15, regardless of how bad they are, they get it. Like, so just like for Liverpool right now, like we were the best team by far last year, but this year we don't deserve to be in the Champions League. So we probably won't be in it next year. That's fair. Whereas in this new model, we have a lifetime membership. Like we are in the Champions League constantly, and that is bullshit. But the problem is, what I fully think will happen is they'll remove that. The one objection is this non-relegation thing. So if I was them, I would compromise on that one thing and go, yeah, we'll put relegation back in. You qualify the same as you qualify for the Champions League, but everything else is the same. We own it, not freaking UEFA. The Premier League don't get to decide anything. The clubs will own it, and we take all the money. And then people like Gary Lineker and Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher are going to be screwed because now suddenly their big objection's gone, but they've pinned their freaking opinion to the mast of I will never work on that show. And it's like, well, now that show's the same as the Champions League.
Into the same league though. You know, but, like if they go into
the Super League is not to replace the domestic fixtures.
That's to replace the Champions League.
To replace the Champions League. Yeah. The challenge that you're going to have with the whole founding members thing is I can't see them relinquishing on that. Like there's 5 spaces that you can tokenly play for. What would they relegate? 1 team, you know. But and the likelihood is, given the money and the unfair advantage that it would give those teams in their domestic competitions to do a Munich and literally just buy every player that's half decent. I don't know. I think the nature of that model will mean that it's unlikely that one of the original members go down because they have such a monopoly on it. But football hasn't been about the fans and isn't about the fans, and it hasn't been since 92, maybe before that. The fact that I paid in fact, guys, I think you might have come with me. £69 a ticket to go and watch Liverpool play ball in the Europa League, not even the Champions League. Nearly £70, you know.
See, the last year I've lost a bit of interest in football, but I think it may be just down to the atmospheres now.
Well, yeah, and the fact that Liverpool is shit this year.
I mean, even the back end of last season when we were going to win the league for the first time in 30 years, I was a little bit disinterested. I just think it's like the lack of atmosphere has absolutely killed it. But I do also wonder whether the whole situation has ruined that kind of enjoyment for me and the money attached to it. You know, my mindset has definitely shifted over last year.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting to see what happens when the fans come back. But if I still keep on feeling like I do now, I'm just going to cancel all my sports because I'm not enjoying it like I used to.
Yeah, we talk about inflation, but I Googled it actually today because people were saying about, you know, the football's been about fans for years. I thought, I'll grab some data on this. And what do you think a ticket to go see Man United in 1993, I think it was, how much do you reckon it was, the average price for a ticket back then?
£18.50?
£15.
I'd say 30.
It's £3.50.
Wow.
So it is 30 years ago. So obviously you've got to factor in inflation, but by and large, they've just pumped the prices up. It's gone from, and that's Man United. £3.50.
So it would have gone up naturally. What do we say? Money doubles every 15 years. So we went for 30 years. It was
7 to 14.
Yeah, £14 would be the equivalent. Whereas Man U ticket now, what is it? 70, 80 quid?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't really know because I don't associate myself with Man U.
No, but I think the reason why Man United was the example is they were like the top team back then. So it's like they're the peak. They're the top team, like the most expensive ticket, and it's £3.50 in 1993. And now you fast forward till today, and it's, you know, average price 70 quid a ticket.
What was it in 1998? So 5 years after that. I'm sure when I started going, it will have been. I'm sure I've got tickets for like £14 to £16.
Yeah, they're a little bit over that. I think
that's in 5 years.
Yeah, I think the reason why 1993 is used, didn't the Premiership start in 94?
92, 93 was the
just started.
Yeah, so Leeds won it the last time.
That's when it starts to having hockey stick up, is when they really realise. I think that's
we're onto something
here. That's the case of like just keeping all the money for yourself, isn't it? They literally rebranded themselves like we're our own league, not part of the rest of you. So they kept all the money at the top. So I think
But it's
that's when
not
they really started shoveling the ticket prices up because they could keep all the money.
But isn't it funny that these guys broke away from the FA and now they themselves are not happy that people are breaking away? You know,
Oh, yeah.
it's just the hypocrisy is everywhere. It's so frustrating.
Power. the one which I'd be quite interested in is if they did some like 5 European leagues, so kind of what Darnell misunderstood it as. So you got various clubs around Europe which have basically died off, you know, as the money's come in, their local area can't afford to put more money into that club, like Anderlecht, Marseille, Club Bruges, Ajax, all these kind of like Northern Europe teams plus France, because it's a bit of a shit league now. And they can't afford to keep up with the big boys who are in the commercial areas like Spain. It was Italy in the 90s. I mean, you got England as well. So if you had like the European league, so you had like 5 leagues on top, and you basically had all these various teams get into it, then you have your domestic leagues underneath, which then feed into them. Would it be possibly a way to actually get the money into those clubs again? And actually,
but again, you're talking about football, and they're all wearing the T-shirt saying "football is for the fans." So what my home games are traveling to, the away games are traveling to Spain every week, or Portugal every week, or Italy every week. You know what working class fans going to afford to actually follow the team?
I actually
it would
never
just be home
understood
games.
how any working class man could afford pre-pandemic, like every week or every other week, and then those that travelled as well. I don't know. Clearly, they must.
What is it?
Investing elsewhere.
It's 20 away games. So 20. I mean, you
19 away games.
I think to be fair to a lot of fans, like some of the real hardcore fans, it is every penny they have.
It is. It is. I know people who work overtime to pay for tickets, and you know will take. Yeah, it is. It's for a lot of people. It's everything. It's genuinely there are no presents this Christmas because we have a season ticket. You know.
Yeah.
And what solves this? Hard money. But it gives you something else to look forward to, doesn't it? Because it kind of reverberates.
Hard money.
It actually does. Yeah. The one outlet for that guy that works those 10-hour shifts throughout the night, he literally lives for the weekend. So he's happy to spend every spare penny on that football game, win or lose. He's part of that journey. It's like literally becomes his purpose, because there's no point keeping the money in the bank. He doesn't know how to invest it, so he might as well spend it week by week doing what he loves. And it's fair play. But the problem is, like, now he's getting corruption from both sides. That average fan that's really committed, his wages are getting devalued by inflation. And then on the other side, there's a different, basically it is capitalism, which I'm a big fan of, but they're pumping the prices up as high as they possibly can. And it's a bit, I think it almost mirrors like house prices I see, which is like house prices have gone as high as they can to make it that someone can pay off a mortgage by the time they're 70. Like they can't go any higher, because you've got to at least pretend these people are going to pay it back. Like the average house price can't be 5 million. Like, it just can't, because no one's going to. The average person doesn't earn 5 million in their lifetime, so it has to be about 300 grand has to be the average price, because then you double it or triple it, because that's the interest they're going to pay.
Now, we're on 250, 260, somewhere about there.
I think it's about 300 now, the average house price in the UK. So I think the average, and then if you add on the interest, I think it's about $1 million, like you're going to pay back over the course of your lifetime, over like 30, 40 years. And it's the same with ticket prices on like football games. They've gone from 350 and they've gone to about £70. And if they could keep pushing it, they would. But in reality, they can't fill the stadium. If they put the prices like at 100, 200, 300 pound a ticket, literally they're not going to fill it.
But this goes back to the Super League, and the danger there is that those teams would. I saw something today that was different numbers, but there's a 15-year waiting list for Liverpool, and that's Liverpool in a relatively, the biggest team in England, but a relatively poor area. Like the 15-year waiting list, £850 average season ticket price a year. It's just insane. And so Liverpool could make it 1,000. They could make it 1,200. All the local fans would scream and have a fit about it. But the reality is that they would fill that stadium 15 years over.
Yeah, especially if they made a lot of the seats like corporate seats, like open to business.
Yeah.
Businesses would buy them all up, wouldn't they?
So here we go. A year ago, the average house price, August 2020, 256. So within the last year, I know things. Well, the last 6 months, things have gone even crazier with house prices. So you're probably closer to 300. But yeah, you're right for roundabout, because I know that our house prices shot up because we're looking at improvements. So we looked at houses in surrounding area, and I was just like, our house is worth way more than we thought. But consequently, the houses which we've moved to are worth more. So therefore, it's a further amount of money in between our house and the next one because of the inflation of the pound. And so, yeah, we decided definitely don't move. And this is where I want to retire, because ultimately pay it off and then actually not worry about money. Whereas you keep on moving, you keep on spending.
Yeah. Here's some bullshit news. Anyone see the Bitcoiner fighting on Saturday against the YouTuber? Darnell did.
Oh, gosh. Ben,
Who was it?
Ben Askren.
Ben Askren, yeah.
Yeah.
Who
I didn't
was-
even want to message you about it. That's how annoyed I was about that. I felt like it was just rigged. Because
rigged?
I'm sure you've seen that clip where Ben Askren was getting like pummeled, like on the ground and pound, taking loads of shots, and then he went on to win that fight. And Ben just kind of looked happy that he just took home more than he'd ever taken home before. And like he said, just go and coach some kids, but with $1 million plus in the bank.
Yeah.
Who is
Ben's
he?
better than
Jake Paul.
Jake Paul.
Is that the one who filmed some dead person in the woods or something?
No, that's his brother. They've both been fighting, and it's weird because I think, to be fair to Jake Paul, I think like obviously he's creates a lot of controversy, but I think he's being quite a genius in the way he's picking his fights, because he picked technically like the MMA guy that has got the least ability at stand up ever. Like his striking is a joke, like a complete, like literally there's memes about Ben striking in the UFC like ever since he got in there. Like he's a wrestler, right? So like, and you took away the only thing. He can't do jiu-jitsu. Normally MMA guys, if they can do wrestling, they can also do jiu-jitsu. Like he can only do wrestling, and he can't strike at all. The only time like people would hit him in the head and he'd like it, because then that means your hand's high, which means he can take you down. And Jake Paul picked him out because he's got a load of world records. He's been in the Olympics, all for wrestling. And so now it just looked good that he like smashed him out. And yeah, and I think I agree. Like I think once Ben felt that and he got smashed to the floor, I think like he looked wobbly, but like he's out of shape. He's 38. He had hip surgery like 4 months ago. 5 months ago. He
How much
had a
did
new
he earn
hip
for
replacement.
this?
Like he's fat, like he's out of shape. He hadn't trained for like 6 months. He had 11 weeks notice. Like of course he was gonna, the second he get the floor, like I think he just went, there's no point getting up. Like I'm not gonna win this. Like, I'm not gonna get brain damage for this fall. Like I'm just gonna look a little bit wobbly, say to the ref I'm fine, but I know if I wobble my legs, the ref's gonna call it off. So he called it, and he goes home with £500,000. Jake Paul rolls on to the next one, and I think he's been genius in the fact that now the entire MMA community are like, who's next to stand up to this guy? It's like, why do we give a shit? Like, why isn't he fight a boxer? Oh, he's not going to fight a boxer because he can get smashed to pieces. He wants to fight a fucking wrestler in MMA.
Correct. Because a true boxer would have, done so much more damage, would have stood up to that. And I think Floyd knows this when he's fighting his brother, and but it makes money, and it makes quick money and cheap money.
Floyd fought a YouTuber.
No, Connor.
He's looking to fight a YouTuber in Jake Paul's brother, Logan.
What? Conor McGregor's?
No, Floyd.
Floyd Mayweather
is going to fight again.
Yeah, but weirdly, that is a kind of quite an interesting matchup. Obviously, like Floyd is like 5'7", something like that. Like really, like quite small. Like Logan is 6'2". He's a big fella. You know how we've talked about this numerous times. Like weight classes are there for a reason, right? You can throw in like Conor McGregor, like who's like say the best in his weight class when he was, throw him in against like the 30th guy at heavyweight, he smashes Conor to pieces. Like weight matters, like it really does, like power matters. So it's going to be a bit interesting with basically like Logan is a heavyweight, and
looking at him, he's a bit of a beast.
Yeah, he's a big fella.
Yeah,
he's shit at boxing. He's shit at boxing.
Yeah,
like, he lost to a YouTuber, Logan.
But Mayweather is like one of the best boxers ever. Like,
exactly.
Pummel the hell out of him and keep it going for 10 rounds so it makes more money.
Yeah, well, I think Floyd would struggle to knock him out as well because he's a big fella. He just want to get
exactly.
Yeah, he's not going to knock him out.
He's just going to dance around him like he did with Conor and hopefully make him tired, and then maybe he falls over.
I was going to say, when you make someone tired and you've got to make them think, not just physically, but mentally, because I think that's what he did against Conor. He mentally made him think constantly, okay, what am I doing here? What am I going to do there? That's when the person becomes tired, and then it's easier to knock them out.
Yeah. What did you think of the entertainment? Did you see any of it?
I didn't see any of the entertainment, but the only entertainment that you ever need to not necessarily see but hear is Snoop on that mic. Snoop is like a commentary genius. He's always been into wrestling, and I think he just the way that he just comes up with things and he sets things up. He was talking about Ben Askren's 1940 stance, and I just thought it was genius.
To be honest, like I think you can have some Snoop, but you need some form of stability around him. And oh my God, the entire cast of the Thing people running that show, they started off relatively sober, and then Snoop arrives, fucking smoking his head off. They all obviously get on it, and then I'm pretty sure they start smashing the white stuff because the commentary just goes off the rails at one point. Like they're literally cheering on fighters, like knock him out, punch him. They're fans. Like you're meant to be commentating on the proper thing, and I think they literally started partying. Like it's just.
They must all have shares in the company as well, because I totally hear that. But I mean, they're making some serious money. I mean, apparently Jake Paul made 65 million.
Yeah, well, they did a million pay-per-view. 1.5 million pay-per-views at $50 a pay-per-view, 75 million overall, and Mayweather and Conor, I think they only did like 2 million. They did 1.5. They nearly did. Like that's the ultimate super fight. That's the ultimate boxer against the ultimate MMA guy, and we got a fucking YouTuber against a wrestler, and they nearly matched them number to number. It's crazy. The world we live in right now is like fucking crazy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Are we done now, boys? I think we're talking about bollocks.
Yeah, we kind of we've deviated. We've gone Bitcoin to pandemic to lockdown, and then we went over to football. Then we went over to some YouTuber's brother who fighting some guy who I've never heard. And then,
I mean, current affairs is definitely one of those things that we're definitely going to have to touch on.
Yeah, well, technically, one of the reasons why I bought Ben anyway is he's a Bitcoiner. So he's, I saw him on a podcast today with Dave Portnoy, who's like the CEO of Barstool Sports. And he's a big Bitcoiner. Like, admittedly, he's got a podcast and he does do a podcast with a Litecoin guy. But every time I've seen Ben on a podcast, and like he got blamed for the dump in Bitcoin, like, that we dropped 20%. Yeah. Literally, like, just as he walks out against Jake, the Bitcoin price dumps 20%, and everyone was like, they saw Ben looking all podgy and fucking nervous. They're like, if he's the representative of Bitcoin, fucking sell. Like, get it on.
If this was a work thing, I'd be like, oh, my internet connection doesn't support video.
Yeah, but they're stupid, and I know.
Good job you got out, or why you're wearing a hat. Either look at Ross.
I got my hair's clear. We're not. This is what is it? This is like before, during. No, you're during.
Yeah. Start.
That's what happens eventually.
Fellow plebs, if you want to hear us, then tune in.